We tend to treat awkwardness like it's some kind of personal flaw, a glitch in our own social software. But the analysis we're about to go through argues that's completely fundamentally wrong. Awkwardness isn't a feeling, it's an error signal from a system being pushed to its absolute breaking point.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Why does a pause of just 4 seconds trigger the exact same part of your brain that processes physical pain? It feels like a genuine threat because, on a deep biological level, it is one. This has nothing to do with being shy. This is about a critical system failure.
And the key to this entire system, it's this number, 200 milliseconds. That is the universal, species-wide rhythm of human conversation. It's the ideal gap between one person stopping and the next person starting. It is the very pulse of social connection. And when that pulse gets disrupted, the whole system starts to crash. So here's the core thesis. That awful, cringy feeling isn't a personality flaw. It's the audible alarm of a finely tuned cybernetic system, the actual machinery of human connection being stressed beyond its limits. We're going to break down exactly how that system works, how modern life is systematically designed to break it, and what the catastrophic stakes are when it fails for good.
Okay, let's dive right into this fundamental mechanism, the 200 millisecond clock. This is the biological constant that is governing every single conversation you have, whether you're aware of it or not.
And right away, we hit a massive paradox. The social system demands we respond in 200 milliseconds, right? But our brains need at least 600 milliseconds just to formulate a single word. It's a cognitive impossibility. So how does any conversation ever feel smooth?
Well, the answer is that your brain is a prediction engine. You aren't actually waiting for the other person to finish talking. You're running a constant simulation of their sentence, predicting where it's going to end, and preloading your response to launch it at the perfect moment. It's a breathtaking high-wire act your brain is pulling off constantly. And when that prediction fails, the system is incredibly sensitive to delay. A pause up to about 600 milliseconds feels pretty normal. But once you cross that 1 second threshold, the brain starts flagging it as interactional trouble. And at 4 seconds, the system screams critical failure, a signal of rejection so strong it triggers the brain's alarms for pain and social exclusion.
So, if our brains are wired for this 200 millisecond world, what happens when our environment completely breaks those rules? This brings us to what you could call phantom friction and how our technology systematically distorts this biological clock.
Look, in person, the physics are dead simple. Latency is practically zero. But on a video call, the network itself adds 300 to 500 milliseconds of dead time before your response even starts its journey back. The very architecture of the medium injects a fatal delay, and your brain doesn't know it's network lag. It just processes it as social lag, as rejection. And the data on this is just undeniable. The average turn-taking gap in face-to-face conversations, it's around 231 milliseconds, right in that perfect sweet spot. On video calls, it jumps to 366 milliseconds. That is a nearly 60% increase, which structurally forces our conversations into the hesitation zone by default.
And this gets us to the real definition of Zoom fatigue. It's not just about staring at a screen. It's the massive cognitive load of constantly fighting your own brain, of consciously telling yourself, okay, that 500 millisecond pause, that was just lag. It wasn't a sign that my boss hates my idea. You are manually overriding a primal threat detection system for hours on end. Of course, it's exhausting.
But if silence generates all this friction, whose job is it to fix it? Well, it turns out the cost of that friction is not distributed equally. At all. It's dictated by power. It's really this simple. Status grants you the privilege of controlling the clock. It's the ability to create a long pause without anyone interpreting it as your failure. In any hierarchy, it's the powerful who own the silence.
So the exact same 4-second silence means two completely different things depending on your status. If it comes from a CEO, we see it as thoughtful deliberation, a display of power. If it comes from an intern, it's read as incompetence. The subordinate is basically forced to perform all the emotional labor of filling those gaps just to avoid being seen as inept.
Now, beyond just the audible gaps, there is an entire hidden channel of communication that underpins this whole system. It's like an invisible carrier wave that tells us whether a silence is safe or if it's a threat. Researchers call this interactional synchrony. It's this subconscious millisecond-level dance of nods and eyebrow flashes and tiny microexpressions. And when this stance is in sync, it acts as the glue of rapport. It reassures both people that the connection is stable, even during a pause in the conversation. And when we're judging someone's attitude, are they being sincere or dismissive? This nonverbal channel is totally dominant. Body language provides a whopping 55% of the signal. The words themselves, a mere 7%. This is exactly why a perfectly timed nod can rescue a conversation from the brink of awkwardness. But here's the killer problem with digital media. Video compression and lag, they completely desynchronize these visual cues from the audio. So a supportive nod that arrives 300 milliseconds late isn't processed as support. The brain registers it as a mismatch, almost like a deep fake signal of insincerity. The very tool that's meant to connect us actually corrupts the carrier wave of trust. So what happens when these errors, these awkward silences, and these digital dysynchronies, what happens when they start to pile up? This brings us to the really hard problem, the permanent consequences of systemic miscalibration. Think of your social standing as a kind of bank account, but for social capital. Let's call them idiosyncrasy credits. You earn them by being competent, by conforming to that 200 millisecond rhythm. Every single awkward silence, every mistimed interruption, that's a withdrawal. And if your balance hits zero, you risk total social exclusion. This is where it gets a little scary. Research into social tipping points suggests a terrifyingly clear threshold. When your rate of calibration errors, your awkward moments, exceeds 25% of your interactions, the network stops seeing them as just isolated incidents. Instead, the network just recategorizes them as a permanent trait. You are no longer someone who has awkward moments. You are an awkward person. In game theory terms, the network's strategy literally shifts from conditional cooperation to always defect. People stop engaging with you, you stop getting invited, your social utility just collapses. And the most brutal part is a concept called hysteresis. It means once that reputational collapse happens, it's functionally permanent. Simply going back to normal error-free behavior isn't enough to restore trust. You're locked out of the very interactions you would need to earn back your credits. So the next time you feel that spike of panic in a stalled conversation, remember what you're actually hearing. It is not a personal failing. It is the sound of a precise, ancient, biological system screaming that a critical connection is about to be lost for good.